Hello and thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about a famous movie as well as a famous book called My Neighbor Totoro. And the book here is something I bought when I went to Lightbox Expo, the very first convention in Pasadena, California. And they had this huge section on Ghibli, and I saw this book. It was wrapped up, and I thought it was like an original concept art book of the movie. But even though it says it on the front cover, it says the novel. And so I realized when I bought it and opened it up that it's entirely words. It's a novel, except for there are little watercolor drawings by Miyazaki. And the novel itself is by Sugiko Kubo. Probably said that wrong. And he's a famous Japanese children's author. And he took the story, no doubt in allowance by Studio Ghibli, and rewrote it into a children's novel. So I have no real plan for this video other than I'm going to go through my sticky notes and I'm going to read sections that I highlighted and share with you what I think. I'm about 2/3 the way down the book, so I'm not actually totally finished, but I think it's very fascinating, and it's very intriguing to read the same story in a different medium and to have it done well. I've had a lot of interest in this topic for a long time of translating something from a different medium, but also doing it masterfully. So here we have a great book that necessarily has to add things into the way it's done that weren't in the original movie, because once you take out visuals, you have to, one, describe a lot, but also you have the freedom and actually the valuable tool of writing is that you can add in things that otherwise wouldn't be able to be put in the movie. So the whole story is done in third person limited in Satsuki's perspective. So she's one of the two young girls in the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a classic and you should go see it. And maybe even right now before you finish this video, because I'm going to be talking about spoilers and I'm going to be talking about the entire thing. So, and it's not going to make much sense if you haven't seen it. So anyway, so this is a point that just talks about the hospital that their mom is staying at, and I just felt there are certain things in this book that it adds details that you wouldn't otherwise know. And I think this is also, it's talking about that their uncle is actually the one who's driving the car that they've packed all their stuff into when they're traveling to their new house at the beginning. So you wouldn't know that unless you read Uncle Fujiyama, because in the movie it doesn't go into that, right? It also doesn't go into what the father does for work, which it does go into in here. Another cool thing is, I knew this because I had heard it from somewhere, but here it's describing the characters. It says she's the youngest of the two daughters. May was 4 years old. Her father had named her after the month of May too. May and May were moving to a new home in May. So they're moving along, they're moving to their new house, and it's the month of May, and they're singing on the ride there, they're singing May and May in the month of May, something like that. Where is it? It kind of repeats it a few times, but May and May, riding along in May, because the word Satsuki also means May. So in Japanese, Satsuki was the old name for the month of May, and then they named their other daughter Mei with M-E-I, which is also named after the month of May. So it's just an interesting piece that I don't believe that they sing that song in the movie. Um, but and their names, are just Satsuki and Mei, and it doesn't actually explain that piece of information. But I did hear it somewhere before I read this book. Sometimes some of the things I've highlighted here are just ways of writing things that I really liked. So, Granny was very wrinkly and dark from the sun, and she had a big wart over one of her eyes. She was different in every way from gentle, well-mannered grandmother Terashima. And it's interesting just seeing things from Satsuki's perspective. I think it's cool because you get a deeper sense of the character. Here's another just area that is highlighted for its prose. Beneath a scattering of shining white clouds, in a sky so blue it was almost purple, a line of birds calling into the distance crossed overhead. I think the rest of this is good too, actually. A pear orchard in full flower swayed gently in the wind, like a white cloud hugging the earth. Small stands of trees were scattered along the borders between the rice paddies. Grass-covered footpaths ran between them on low dikes, with dandelion flowers winking up out of the grass as if they were tiny yellow suns. The wind whispered softly through the fresh, sparkling air. Now and then the lowing of a cow floated to them on the breeze. The three-wheeler putted along, more slowly now. Here's where I was saying it gets into Satsuki's brain a little more, where before they moved the house, the dad was having some kind of just conversations with, I think, their aunt, and Aunt Kyoko, and just kind of Aunt Kyoko was just doubting the father in various ways, and so Satsuki, her thoughts here is, "That is so stupid," thought Satsuki, who had overheard. "Daddy loves us and cares about us. Mommy got TB because she got the TB bug. That's all. It wasn't Daddy's fault. I don't like you, Aunt Kyoko, so there." And at a later point, she's yelling towards Tokyo, where they used to live, and she's saying, "I don't like you, Aunt Kyoko." Kind of the same thing. So, here's another point where they see Kanta for the first time, and in the movie they just, there's a relationship that develops between Sasuke and Kanta, but you don't really understand maybe all of it. So in this book, there's more to that. There's actually an image at one point where Kanta comes over and he's helping Satsuki start the fire the first day that they move in, and that's not in the movie, but it adds to the character in the story. And I believe that Miyazaki's images in this book were created before the written material, so which means that he actually painted an image of Kanta and Satsuki working together to create the fire ahead of time before the book was written. So it's not that it was made up after to make more sense of the relationship, but it was actually part of the processing of the story underlying the movie that then ended up in the novel. And I think that's really cool to see, because here we have a revised version of the story that actually includes the undertones of what this story was in the first place, that how it came to be what it is now. So anyway, here's a little thing that Satsuki says about Kanta, which is, "He's really weird. Those short pants are way too big for him. It's not even summer yet, and he's already brown." Satsuki frowned. "I mean, we haven't even had a fight, and he doesn't like me. I think he's a big bully." Here's a nice one where this is a classic scene in the movie, which is when Satsuki goes out and she's collecting firewood, but there's a storm coming, and then all the firewood flies out of her hands into the air. So it says, "Then, with a peal of savage, ghostly laughter that rippled toward the four corners of the yard, the wind shot into the sky toward the crescent moon, It tore the firewood from her arms and sent it flying into a spiraling cloud of twigs and leaves toward the crown of the huge laurel. The laurel's branches shook violently in the wind, and the tree rasped and groaned as if its giant trunk were ready to split right down the middle. The frenzy in the sky was reaching a peak. I thought that was awesome. "I need you to do something for us," she said in a solemn voice. "I'm sure you'll be here when we're gone. But until then, we need your protection. Please don't forget us." That's what Satsuki... It says, she put the firewood by the back door, stood up straight, and faced the tree. She had decided it was time to say something to this giant sentinel that stood over their house. The tree must have understood. How could it not have heard what she said? Satsuki decided the laurel was nodding its branches back at her. She made up her mind that things would be all right. We're moving through these notes. So here's just a funny thing with her dad and his humor. She's trying to get the fire ready, and it's being kind of difficult. And then it's like Tatsu was watching and smiling. Now and then he poked fun at her gently, but he didn't offer to help. Satsuki: "Yes, Dad. How's it going?" "It's fun." "Glad to hear it's fun. Is the water in the bathtub any warmer than before?" "Ha ha ha, you're mean." So here's the image I was speaking about where Kanta, where is he in the image? He's here crouching, and he's helping Satsuki light the fire in their new house. Here's just more character development that I liked with Satsuki, where they're getting ready to go to the hospital for the first time, and this is how it starts. It says, "The breakfast dishes had all been washed and put away, and the laundry hung out to dry. But Tatsuo didn't seem in a hurry to get going. 'Daddy, aren't we going?' Mei said. 'If we don't leave soon, we'll be late,' Satsuki said. 'Hold on there, we have to lock up the house,' said Tatsuo. 'Wait a minute, I left my cap on in the desk study, or on the desk in the study. I'll go get it.' 'You better not start reading a book, Daddy.' Satsuki's patience had run out. They were supposed to hurry. 'Of course not,' Tatsuo said. He laughed happily. Satsuki looked terribly serious. 'But you're not even trying to hurry.' 'All right, all right.' And I just like that as a sense of how Satsuki's seeing the situation, or her urgency about it, where I believe in the movie they just skips over them riding the bicycle on the way down the hill, which is perfect for the movie. Like, that's just gives me goosebumps as I'm saying it. It's perfect. But for the book, it makes sense to have that additional info for the clarity of the story and for the character and all that. This is kind of cool, just introduction. So it's chapter 3. It's called Mother, and it starts with, "When Satsuki opened her eyes next morning, she felt very odd. She lay in the futon. The feeling wouldn't go away. Everything seemed so different. The room was so large. It was dark, too, until she noticed a little circle of sunlight on the floor next to her pillow. Sunlight was streaming through a knothole in the shutter. Peering through it, she could see blurry trees outside. There was an old pond in the garden, now just a few shallow puddles. The grass grew thick where the rest of the water used to be. Next to it was a staircase of stone slabs that went to the top of a little hammock." It's written hummock here, which I think it's like a hammock. It's supposed to be a hammock, maybe? Or maybe a hummock is something I don't know what that is. "Had they climbed it yesterday? There was a stone footbridge. Wasn't there a little stream running under it?" So she's just waking up, and it says at the end here, "One by one, Satsuki remembered different things about this new place she had woken up in." It's just kind of the sense of being in a new environment and what a child might kind of feel as they're waking up in that way, and it's well written. Here's another little character thing. When her mom is... When they're introducing her mom, which is kind of neat in itself because it shares some of who she was beforehand. It says, Yatsuko ran her fingers through Satsuki's hair. Then she gave her daughter a quick hug. Yasuko was a graceful, slender woman who always smelled faintly of honeysuckle. Before she fell ill, she had always been busy and full of energy, and went everywhere with her head held high. Suddenly Satsuki remembered how her mother looked and sounded when she was mad, and just as suddenly, the memory made her feel safe and comforted. She laughed out loud. This is just a nice, simple school song that was in the book. That it's one of Tatsuo's old school songs, so their dad's song. And then I like the next one too, actually. It says, so, Tatsuo sang one of his old school songs, and it went like this. The clouds over Kyoto are purple in spring, and the straw banquet mats have a fragrance like flowers. Satsuki and Mei sang a children's song, and it went like this. The white goat sent a letter, but the black goat thought it better to eat the white goat's letter than to read it. And I think they're on, I'm not sure what's happening here, if they're all together walking or something. And then she says, or the little girl Mei says, I won't eat Mommy's letter because I'm not a black goat. I'll never eat Mommy's letter. And their happiness went on, even after they got home and were safe in their own beds. Such a nice story. Here I'm skipping a bunch, but I'm just going to go to this one here, which is, yeah, this is, I guess just this point here is when Kanta shows up with the umbrella, and he goes, and he hands her the umbrella under the rain. The way it describes it here is just interesting with this first sentence, which is, Satsuki was so surprised, she did just what he told her, which is to grab the umbrella. So I just thought that was interesting in seeing, like, oh, she was just so shocked that she's like, okay, and then it just describes he runs down the road. So this is when they first go to the laurel tree. The light was gloomy among the chestnuts, beeches, and oak trees of Sukamori woods. Satsuki bounded up the stone steps to the old shrine at the foot of the giant laurel. The grounds around the little shrine were lonely with neglect. The stone water basin lay toppled on its side. The names of donors from generations past, inscribed on stone lanterns, whose crowns lay fallen on the ground, were weathered away and hard to make out. Mei, you're getting heavy, Tatsuo said as he climbed the stairs after Satsuki. Look, Daddy, isn't it beautiful? Satsuki stood at the base of the great tree, gazing upward. From this close, the laurel looked almost supernatural. It would have taken 40 or 50 children like Satsuki and Mei to encircle its huge trunk, with hands joined. The surrounding trees nodded in the wind, endlessly bowing toward it in silent respect. Rays of sunlight angled down, lighting up the trunks of some trees and leaving others in cool dimness. Satsuki couldn't begin to imagine how she might describe the laurel's size. And it goes on, but then I liked this part at the end here where it says, Tatsuo begins to speak, and he says, this tree has been around here for centuries, etc. And then he says, or the way it describes it here is, he stood looking up at the laurel and spoke to his daughters as grown-ups. It attracted me like a magnet. A long time ago, people lived in harmony with the forest. Both were inseparable, like mother and child. And then Satsuki says, like Mommy and us? That's right. Then Satsuki said merrily, is this tree in the hospital? The hospital? I'm not so sure about that. And then it goes into the letter that Satsuki writes to her mom, and that's the end of that chapter, and it begins chapter 5. But I really like how this is done in the book, where it introduces that letter right there, because that is the next scene in the movie. But the fact that it just goes into the letter, and it just writes it like in italicized font. So it's not explaining that now she's writing the letter. It's just happening. And I like that part about him speaking to his daughters as grown-ups, because it just connects with me. It feels like I could understand that dynamic now that I'm the age I am, with being able to connect to, being able to, or to be grown up with children and to trust them to hear you and to have that type of relationship happen. So I just feel that moment really speaks to that for me, and it's very special. Here's another moment where it shows Satsuki's perspective of her dad, and it's when Mei goes disappearing in the daytime because she runs into Totoro's little tunnel, where she's chasing the little rabbits, little Totoros. And so Satsuki comes home from school, and they don't know where Mei is, and so she's looking for them. And Satsuki's thought is, all he thinks about is work, thought Satsuki. Aunt Terashima used to complain about it all the time, and she was right. She could feel herself getting angry with her father. She hadn't liked it when Auntie criticized him, but now she found herself agreeing with her. Work, work, work. Was it so much to ask for him to check every now and then to see if Mei was all right? This is a cool line that happens on page 89, where it's foreshadowing what's going to happen later in the book, which is that Mei goes very far from home and they have to find her. Where when Mei first disappears looking for Totoro, there's this line by Satsuki, which is thinking that Mei would make it to the river by Miyoko's house. But then she thinks, well, she wasn't there. Well, of course not. Mei would never go that far from the house, which is opening the door, or the foreshadowing to later when Mei actually goes that far from the house. So those little subtle things, if you didn't actually know the story ahead of time, you might not catch that until your second read, and then you'd be like, hey, it was mentioned here that's a possibility. This is kind of cool too, because it doesn't have the descriptions of Totoro, or like it doesn't have the imagery of Totoro in the movie. You have to describe it, and I haven't actually reached the point where Totoro shows up yet, but they describe what it's like for Mei, what Mei sees when she sees the little Totoros, which is, I saw him, I even fell asleep on his tummy. It had to have been a dream. Satsuki felt sure of it. Mei was just confusing a dream with the real world. But Mei, Satsuki urged her, what kind of an animal was it? Totoro's an animal, right? I guess, Mei told her. I don't know. Was it like a raccoon? Mm-hmm. Was it like a fox? No. A cow? No. Was it like a tiger? Oh no. Was it a cat? Maybe a little bit. How about a rabbit? Sort of. A rabbit, cat, raccoon? Satsuki cocked her head and smiled. That talks. Mei stamped her foot. Don't make fun of me. I saw him. I'm not fibbing. I saw little Totoros too, and the big one told me his name. I just saw him. I also liked the way I think here where it talks about, I'll just read it for you. Tetsuo and Satsuki were even more confused. Mei was very earnest. When he walked around, she pointed to her tummy. I could see the grass right through him. You could see through it? Asked Satsuki. Mm-hmm. Satsuki rolled her eyes. That sounds like a ghost. No, it was a Totoro, not a ghost. So that's actually not the part I was thinking of, but that's another way of okay, we need to incorporate this description of that she can see through this Totoro. Do we do it when the Totoro first shows up and as he's going through the grass where she acknowledges that? I would say that's probably not the best spot. I forget exactly what it said there, but I didn't highlight anything in a sticky note. But I would say not, because at that point you want the action of May to be the directing force of the story, where she's getting involved in, like, as a child, if you saw that little rabbit thing, you wouldn't start to intellectualize, like, well, I could see through it. What's going on? You would just follow it, just like May does with acorns and the whole, impulsive excitement of the thing. So I would say it's probably better to include it in a description after the fact, like they did here, instead of that. So there's only 6 more sticky notes. This kind of went quicker than I thought. Probably because I'm talking so fast. So anyway, this was just another thing with May, a little kind of adding to her character, which is they're writing a list of things to do the following day, and this is when their dad goes to work, or that he's going to be gone for most of the day before they read Totoro or meet Totoro when the bus stop scene happens. There's just a lot of good little things. Like even here, it's her dad is like, I'm gonna not bribe you, but for taking care of or just be not even for taking care, but because he's going away for the whole day and he knows like he doesn't want to, he's like, May, you have a tough day ahead of you tomorrow. Tomorrow night you can stay up as late as you want. Great. You can stay up all night while I work if you feel like it. Really? You don't even have to brush your teeth. Awesome. Satsuki, what's that name of that magazine you like? Girls something? Girls Club, Satsuki said. Then I'll buy you a copy. Thanks, Daddy. You've got a big day tomorrow too, so as a special bonus, you can read Girl Clubs in the bath and I won't say a thing. Satsuki laughed. She loved to read, even when she was taking a walk. Even in the bathtub, she would sit in the water holding the book with her left hand and turning the pages with her right. If her hand got wet, she turned the pages with her tongue. If the book was heavy, it sometimes fell in the water, and if Tatsuo caught her, she never heard the end of it. Satsuki, go get a sheet of paper and a pencil, Tatsuo told her. Let's discuss our to-do list for tomorrow. That way, whenever I have to go to work, you'll have a plan all ready. And then they make these lists, and I just liked how May added, right, May should put her crayons in her bag, May said. Satsuki wrote it down. She also wrote at the end of the list, Daddy home, 5:15 bus, Girls Club for Satsuki. And then he says, I'll pick up some croquettes. And then, I don't know if I highlighted this, but later when May shows up at Satsuki's school, and then she ends up in the classroom for a bit, everyone's excited, all the classmates are wanting to give her food and stuff, and then the teacher is actually they give a funny personality to this teacher who's wanting May to stay and is like really wanting to feed her and stuff, and then May refuses croquettes. And she says something like, not because I don't like them, but because my daddy's bringing me home croquettes, so I don't need them right now. I don't actually know what a croquette is, but it's something. Here's another moment where I just thought this is a nice touch, where in the movie, they keep it simplified with the animation where the characters are often wearing the same clothes, right? After breakfast, Satsuki dressed May in her best one-piece dress. The dress had belonged to Mother when she was little. She had altered it for Satsuki, and Satsuki finally handed it down to May. When she wore it, May looked like a different girl. Maybe it was the bright red and green check pattern, but it made her look stylish and new. May, that dress is you, Tatsuo said. It used to be Mommy's, May said proudly and put her hat on with a flourish. Yeah, here's this croquet bit. It is, I like them. Daddy's bringing us croquets for dinner, May said, a bit self-importantly. So I don't need one now. That makes sense. Miss Moriyami put the croquet back in Kazuko's lunchbox. Satsuki felt sorry for Kazuko. May had embarrassed her again. All through lunch, everyone competed to be nice to May. After she finished eating, she sat drawing quietly and didn't fuss or fret at all. Still, when the afternoon bell rang and Satsuki walked through the gate with May, she felt a surge of relief that things were getting finally back on track. It was hot. They were both sweating. Satsuki had a hard time keeping hold of May's hand. Soon after they left the school, she could see a bank of rain clouds coming toward them. Far off, the landscape was dark under the lowering clouds. It was already raining there. Very soon it began to rain where they were. A few drops at first, but big ones, darkening the dust in the road. Come on, May, we better run, Satsuki said as she took off. Raindrops splashed down on them. A grove of bamboo by the roadside swayed as the rain pattered against its slender leaves. A flock of birds rose from the grove and flew away to the west, calling loudly. Farmers in the fields wiped the water from their faces. The rain drummed softly on the broad leaves of cucumber and taro plants along the road. The taro leaves, taro, I'm not sure. The taro leaves were big enough to make an umbrella for a little girl or a hiding place from the rain, but the fields belonged to the farmers. Just kind of some neat descriptions and stuff. You know, it's a well-written book. It is for children. It's definitely not very difficult to read. But it's also not too simplified. So that's also nice. And I think maybe that's, you know, what I think when I say that is probably it's just that perhaps, like, I don't read a lot of children's books, but perhaps the Japanese standard of children's book doesn't simplify things as much as this, or as English ones would, right? This is kind of a nice touch again, just like the story's happening and they have that list of things to do of the day, and then there's 4 more left, she said, and then it lists them again, like daddy home, girls club, main dish, croquettes, have dinner, everybody. And here's where I am in the story, and I got one point on this last page that I have bookmarked, which is, this is good. Satsuki took the plates and cups into the kitchen and washed them in the sink. What next? She decided to get a head start on dinner. She opened the cupboard, looking for the tea tin that held the dried shrimp. Come out, wherever you are. Satsuki found the tin, filled the pot with water from the pump, etc. But the thing there about using come out, wherever you are, relates to when the movie has that in it as well. So that's all I got for Totoro. My Neighbor Totoro, that's where I am in the book. If you like this video as I'm reading the rest of the book, I'll do the same. I'll take sticky notes and I'll then be able to go through them in the same way to finish off the story. And, you know, it'd be kind of neat what the interpretations are of the novel version from the movie, and these little bits and pieces that are interesting to me that stand out as being well crafted and worthy depictions of this beautiful movie. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next time around. Take care.